Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Vicki Miller with Indivisible Philadelphia, and we are thrilled that you're here with us this evening. Um, you will see, you will see we have two candidates with us so far, and Representative Cephas is just about to join. There she is. All right, now we are complete. So thank you all for being here this evening. We think it will be a very interesting candidate forum, and we think that you will learn a lot before you go vote. Um, just a few things. You should put your questions in the chat. We sent out a link earlier with the invite to submit questions, and I will tell you that we've received a lot of questions from you all. We will try to get to all of them. No guarantee that we will get to all the questions in the chat, but we will do our best. But it's only an hour, so we will do our very best to get to everything. And Meg Berlin is here, and she will explain the rules and what the format is for the evening, and then we'll start the questions.
Thank you very much, Vicki. So tonight we are very happy to have the three candidates who are running for Dwight Evans' seat, PA03. These three candidates, as you know, certainly are currently in official positions in representatives and senator in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg. So the format is as follows. We have posed two questions to the candidates. We have given them time to think about them, and each of them will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then they will have 2 minutes for each question, and then they will have at the end of that they will have 3 minutes for a closing statement by each candidate. Vicki will alert them when there's 20 seconds to go, or 30 seconds, excuse me, to go. So with that, let's get started. And Rep. Cephas, we're going to go alphabetically to begin first. And if you would start with your opening statement, please.
Absolutely. And I want to thank Indivisible for all the work that you all have done to flip the House of Representatives, where I've had the opportunity to serve. But as you mentioned, Meg, I am Pennsylvania State Representative Morgan Cephas, and I've been born, raised, and educated in West Philadelphia, where I've had the distinct pleasure of representing my neighbors in Harrisburg for the past 10 years. I also was elected by 25 members of the Philadelphia delegation to be their delegation chair up in Harrisburg, making me the lead voice in conversations about what issues and challenges face Philadelphians and ensuring that they are a priority up in Harrisburg and in the General Assembly. And we fundamentally all want the same thing. We want safe streets. We want to ensure that, ICE and the National Guard aren't coming to kill or snatch our neighbors. We want affordable housing and education. We don't want to have to choose between closing 20 school buildings just to be able to house people. We also want to ensure that there's access to job opportunities that is not destroying our environment. And we want a government that's going to absolutely protect our democracy, protect our freedoms and our rights, and that is not going to look up and try to steal elections in this upcoming midterm. But, I am sure that in order for us to accomplish that, we have to use this opportunity in the 3rd Congressional District as one of the most Democratic seats in this entire country to send a Democrat down to Washington, D.C. that's going to do three things. And the first is absolutely taking on Donald Trump and the Republican Party that is enabling him to do all of these things to the working families across our city, and particularly here in the 3rd Congressional District. But we also want someone that is going to absolutely stand up to Democrats because of the status quo and because of their failure in 2024, and ensuring that we create an agenda that absolutely moves the working families, particularly in this district, forward. And I say that because when I was first elected in 2016, I had to take on the Democratic machine here in the city of Philadelphia to get my seat at the table. And luckily, I was able to be a part of a team that actually flipped the House of Representatives by beating Republicans, MAGA Republicans here in Pennsylvania. And that is something that I will guarantee you I will do as your Congresswoman down in Washington, D.C. Because again, it's about beating Republicans, ensuring ensuring that Democrats are delivering for us in real time, and also going across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to ensure that we flip as many seats as possible. Because right now in this moment, it is important as to the decisions that we are going to make. And again, and I'll close on this, it makes me think of my mother, who every morning has to go to work in her retirement because she cannot afford her home, her heat, and her health care. And it is absolutely because of the dysfunction happening down in Washington, D.C. And quite frankly, the failure of Democrats in 2024 that led us to this moment. So again, as your next Congresswoman for the 3rd Congressional District, I will continue doing the things that I've done over the past 10 years in Harrisburg that we'll have an opportunity to talk about tonight. But I thank you again for your time. I want to absolutely thank Indivisible for helping us get Joanna McClinton that gavel and giving us the ability in the House of Representatives to really deliver for Philadelphians across our city, particularly in real time and in this moment.
Thank you, Rep. Cephas. Rep. Rabb, your turn.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Chris Rabb, and I'm running for Congress to represent our district because our country is in crisis. And now more than ever, we need bold leaders who are not afraid to challenge the status quo and speak truth to power. This moment we're in is why Indivisible was created. Our economy is broken. Our basic human rights are under attack. And the only way we will change things is if we send someone to Washington who's ready to take on Donald Trump and fight back. This is the first time in 35 years that there's been an open seat for this congressional district. And we, the voters, have an opportunity to send a progressive public servant to represent the bluest district in the nation and not another status quo politician. Centrism will not save us. Some candidates are just now catching up to where the people are on the biggest issues in our country. And I've been on the front lines of these fights from the beginning. As we look around, we are seeing too many in Philly being forced out of their neighborhoods because they can't afford to live in the city their families have called home sometimes for generations, or because of masked white supremacists known as ICE. It's all the same system. Now more than ever, Philly needs a true fighter in this seat, standing up to speak truth to power and never backing down. As the only candidate who has a 10-year track record of never taking corporate PAC money, I remain unbought and unbossed by corporate interests or political insiders. And the only people I will serve are my constituents because I work for them and no one else. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Rabb. So, Senator Street, it's your turn.
Thank you. I'm running for Congress because, as was stated, the nation is in crisis, and we need to be able to, and people are hurting. I live in North Philadelphia. I live in one of the poorest parts of the city where I've lived my entire life. Some of my earliest memories are riding on the back of a truck, driven by my dad with my uncle, hanging out the window on a bullhorn, talking about stopping gentrification, talking about stopping Frank Rizzo from staying to be mayor forever. When riding on the back of that truck, we went through parts of the city. People threw rocks at us. I said, Uncle Milt, what should we do? He said, duck, pick them up, and throw them back. I have been in the fight my entire life. I ran for office because I understood we needed to change. I was the only non-incumbent Democrat elected during the first time that we got the Orange Menace. When I got to Harrisburg, understood we needed to get things done and understood that there was real crisis. On my staff, my district director, lost a child to gun violence, grandchild to gun violence. Kasib, who we just lost, he lost a nephew. Lisa lost a daughter. Almost my entire staff has lost people, and we lost Lala on a mass shooting on 60th Street. I didn't just talk about doing something about gun violence. We were able to deliver money to fund programs to adjust the root causes of gun violence, and it's dropped. Healthcare is a crisis for everyone. People in my neighborhood can't afford basic healthcare. I live at 16th and Lehigh. I didn't just talk about it's a progressive value to care about healthcare. I introduced the legislation that created the Pennsylvania Healthcare Exchange, and 500,000 of our neighbors who never had healthcare before now have it. The reality is I'm running for Congress because I understand that we need to fight and deliver. And I will tell you this, when when Donald Trump was talking about taking away our votes, I sued him over a dozen times. I took on Donald Trump and I beat him in court. And most recently, I was a part of the litigation that made him put back the monument to those 10 enslaved individuals.
Thank you. Okay, so now it's time for the questions. We have two questions which we have given you before, and I'll state them so that the audience knows what they are. What is the most important bill you have sponsored since you were elected to the Pennsylvania House or Senate? Why? Who or what prompted you to sponsor that bill, and did it become law? So, Rep. Rabb, it's your turn.
Thank you. So abolishing ICE is something you've heard a number of candidates talk about on the campaign trail. But I was the only candidate to introduce a comprehensive anti-ICE bill way back in 2017 before it was sexy to say, fuck ICE. I am the only one to demand total abolition of immigration detention centers, which are essentially concentration camps. So catchy slogans are good, but legislative action is even better. I introduced this legislation not because I descend from immigrants, not because I represent a district that has a lot of foreign-born constituents. I did it because it's a justice issue. I am only safe unless my neighbor is safe. And unfortunately, very few Democrats stood with me back then when it was considered controversial. But true leadership is when you stand up, even when it's not popular, even when it could have political consequences, because that's what's demanded of true public servants. And yes, by the way, I should say that that was a bill that went nowhere because it was in the minority. How many seconds do I have?
You have more than 30. You have more than 30.
All right.
Yeah.
So the other piece was there is a police misconduct database that is now state law as of the last 6 years. And the reason it is law, even though it doesn't have my name on it, is because we took over the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. A small handful of legislators decided to do a non-violent direct action and shut down the House. And I was one of those leaders who did that. And it led to the adoption of 3 Democratic bills enacted into law under Governor Wolf. And one of those bills became law, which was the police misconduct database, to make sure that killer cops don't sneak out of one police department and sneak into someone else's community and do the same harm. I'm very proud of that. And that bill was passed unanimously in the House and the Senate when both chambers were controlled by Republicans. And I did that in community with other public servants who listen to the people on the ground. And that's important. We were inspired by those folks who expressed their First Amendment rights, who peacefully protest on the streets all across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Rep. Rabb. So, Senator Street, your turn.
Well,
do you want me to repeat the question?
I think I got it.
Okay.
So look, absolutely will agree with my colleague, Rep. Rabb, about the police misconduct bill. It was one of the most important salient moments. And I was a co-sponsor of the bill that got to the governor's desk that Senator Costa was the prime sponsor of. I worked with him. It was inspired after there was a shooting of Antoine Rose, who was killed in East Pittsburgh after he left. I went out with Representative Harris and we talked to the community out there and we put together legislation and we got a bipartisan thing and we got that bill to the governor's desk. And I appreciate all the work that was done and that Jay Costa did in putting together the police responsibility bill, and appreciate it being a co-sponsor working with him. But I think the most important piece of legislation I sponsored was the creation of the Pennsylvania Healthcare Exchange. Pennsylvania Healthcare Exchange, I was a prime sponsor on that bill, and it created Penny. 500,000 Pennsylvanians now have healthcare, and it reduced the cost of all Pennsylvanians' healthcare. I was the chairman of the committee it went through. And we work with the chairs of the committees on all 4 caucuses. The Obamacare tax credits that we were all fighting about to make sure that they were preserved, those tax credits the Congress recently repealed, those tax credits, we used them to create Penny. And we made sure that we didn't just talk about people having access to healthcare, but we made sure they got it. As a member of Congress, I will continue to work, not just to talk about progressive ideals, but to do the work to get bills to people's desks.
Thank you, Senator Street. Rep. Cephas, your turn.
Thank you. I can say that I am the only candidate in this race that has actually gotten 4 bills to the governor's desk as the prime sponsor and not being forced to play second fiddle to Republicans. And one of my bills that I did get passed, one of my proudest moments, was actually extending health care to cover doula care. I spent a significant time in the maternal health space, really trying to tackle the maternal mortality crisis here across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And not only were we able to get the bill to the governor's desk, again, me as the prime sponsor, but I also was able to work with then Governor Tom Wolf to extend Medicaid coverage up to a year postpartum to over 20,000 families across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And, I had an opportunity to also work with then U.S. Senator Bob Casey, who actually mirrored my Medicaid expansion for doula care in the United States Senate. We also were able to establish a universal basic income pilot program here in the city of Philadelphia that gave $1,000 to 250 moms for 18 months to address, again, the maternal mortality crisis here. Additionally, when Temple's labor and delivery unit got shut down in North Philadelphia, I helped to find $5 million to invest and expand that labor and industry care in a different section here in the city of Philadelphia. And I say all that to say because we are absolutely in a maternal health and maternal mortality and morbidity crisis. And not only did I get legislation to the governor's desk, but I created an entire movement here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to tackle these issues head on. So much so that we've actually seen a decline in maternal mortality rates here in the city of Philadelphia. And it's directly as a result of the work that I've been able to do. So when I go down to Washington, D.C. as your Congresswoman, I will be sure to work not just across the aisle, but get issues that affect Philadelphia the most to the desk of the president, but then also ensure that policy work follows behind it.
Thank you, Rep. Cephas. Okay, the next question is, what have you done specifically to work with others to bring them around to your point of view? And what did you accomplish in doing that? So the next one that goes to you, Senator Street.
Well, thank you. Look, there have been a number of instances where I've worked with others, but one example of working with others that might not have ordinarily agreed with me was we were trying to get violence prevention money funded. In that process, at the time, the Republicans had the majorities in the House and the Senate. Their gun violence was spiking to all-time highs, and we needed to do something. And as I talked about people around me and my community, and even in my family were being shot, and we thought we had to do something. At the same time, I listened to what my Republican colleagues, what their concerns were. And there was a raging debate at that time about Sunday hunting. There were many Republicans, many of whom were NRA members, wanted to go out and shoot deer on Sundays. There were others who, because they were super religious, didn't want to be able to do anything on Sundays, including hunting. So there was no way they could pass this without Democratic votes. I sat down with them and said, with some of the hunters, and said, "Listen, you want to shoot deer. I want kids in my community to stop getting shot." Ultimately, they said if we could deliver Democratic votes for Sunday hunting, they could support funding for gun violence reduction programs. We were able to secure $300 million a year, and it has been structurally put in. So we've been funding violence prevention programs in different forms every year since then. Over $1.5 billion has flown. And yes, I made a speech and said, I understand that I don't care what day of the week Brandy's mom is shot. If moms in my community don't have to cry over their kids being shot in the streets, we're able to put something together and we're able to deliver real results to help stop gun violence and fund programs that dealt with the social determinants of gun violence.
Thank you, Senator Street. Rep. Cephas, your turn.
Opportunity to work on a bill with one of my colleagues, Mike Jones from York County, who is a member of our version of the Freedom Caucus here in Pennsylvania. And we worked on a bill together called Dignity for Incarcerated Women. And at that time, there was a lot of conversation around criminal justice reform as it related to the male population. And there hadn't been a lot of discussion about the rising increase in women that were becoming incarcerated, that were heads of households, that had, young people that they were leaving behind. So as a direct result, I was chair of the Women and Girls of Color subcommittee for the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, and I held the first policy hearing in both of the women correctional facilities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and that was Muncie Correctional Facility in Cambridge. I invited my colleague along, Mike Jones in York County, and from that conversation, from that policy hearing, we were able to work collaboratively on this piece of legislation. And while I was in the minority, he was the lead. And unfortunately, we did not get it to the governor's desk. But as a result of us taking the majority, again, thank you, Indivisible, for helping us do that, we were able to get dignity for incarcerated women to the governor's desk. And it did a couple of things. It cemented providing free feminine hygiene products for those that are incarcerated. It also put doula care for those that were pregnant and going into incarceration. It also required trauma-informed care for the correctional officers that were going to be dealing with those that were pregnant while incarcerated. And it also ensured that we limited solitary confinement. And all of this was collectively done because I had my Republican colleague come to a hearing that was never done. And ever since then, we modeled language after multiple different states, worked together with our different parties on both sides of the aisle, because again, you got to cross the aisle if you're going to get anything through a Republican Senate. And as a direct result, we were able to impact those women that are incarcerated by getting that bill to the governor's desk and signed into law.
Thank you very much, Rep. Cephas. Okay, now for the questions that we had from our members.
I have gone.
I'm sorry? You okay? Okay.
I think,
I'm
sorry.
You're right. You're right, Reps. I'm sorry, Rep. Rabb.
Thank you.
I'm not counting.
That's all right. No worries.
Thank you.
A bill that I'm very proud of helps Pennsylvanians hold on to financial wealth when a property owner dies without a will or dies intestate. And that's a lot of people across the Commonwealth. And so I worked with a very conservative Republican, Representative Tim Bonner, in Western PA on a bill that addresses this issue that is really hurting families in urban communities and also in rural communities. So right now, Pennsylvanians who die without a will currently have their assets divided by a judge. And what happens is so many families lose their most valuable financial asset, the family home. And so this bill I introduced in a previous term and it went nowhere, but I reached out through cultivating relationships with some of my colleagues from the Republican Party. And we worked on this bill assiduously. And it passed out of committee unanimously. And just last year, it passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, so much so that a Republican colleague of mine in the Senate, Camera Bartolotta, introduced her version in the Senate. And this is a bill, when enacted into law, hopefully in 2026, will positively impact so many families. And not just row homes in Philly, but also people who own like multi-generational family farms. So this is something that bridges both Democrat and Republican, East and West, and also urban and rural. And this is a bill that has been enacted into law into most states across the country, and I believe that Pennsylvania can be next.
Thank you, Rabb. Sorry about that. Okay, the next question is, do you support and will you fight for universal health care system for all Americans? And I believe Cephas, you go first.
Absolutely. I will fight for a healthcare system that everyone can access. Again, I've spent the last 10 years in Harrisburg fighting to expand Medicaid coverage, to cover doula care, to expand Medicaid coverage to cover postpartum. But we do recognize in this moment that, people are having a difficult time not just accessing healthcare, but also accessing affordable healthcare, particularly when you see the ACA tax credits that have expired. You've seen over 100,000 Pennsylvanians have to drop their health care as a direct result of the expiration of those tax credits. And that is absolutely something that we have to tackle head on, particularly when we take back the Congress. And we need to ensure that we make those tax credits permanent. Additionally, we need to ensure that we're bringing down pharmaceutical prices. Again, my mother, as she is in her retirement, is forced to manage her drug costs. She's a stage 4 cancer survivor. So the decisions that are being made down in Washington, D.C. absolutely have a detrimental impact, not just on my family, but families across the entire 3rd Congressional District and here, particularly in Philadelphia. But we also have to ensure that, we are allowing the government to, negotiate more drug prices than what they currently are able to negotiate. Additionally, we got to hold our healthcare institutions accountable. We have to stop letting private equity buy up our healthcare institutions and in our healthcare system, because it has a detrimental impact when you look at Crozier and you look at Hahnemann that have had a ripple effect on the city of Philadelphia. Additionally, we have to break up the healthcare monopoly that we're seeing with CVS, who not only owns Oak Street Health as your doctor, but also, owns a pharmaceutical company and also, owns the pharmaceuticals where you purchase, and Aetna Health, where they own the insurance company. So it's almost becoming a racket. So we have to ensure that we're breaking up that monopoly. But we have to get to a point to where we are providing health care for every single individual that wants to have access to affordable and accessible health care.
Thank you. Rabb, your turn.
If in Congress today, I would be co-sponsoring the Medicare for All bill and voting for it if it came up on the House floor. Medicare for All is the specific way in which we can enact universal health care. Health care should be a human right. And it's really important that we just say this. It's one of those things that no Democratic candidate is going to say they're against, because it's popular now. But Medicare for All is a very specific approach. The legislation is very clear. I would support it. I would co-sponsor it. I would advocate for it. And also, there's nothing in how I raise money in this race that would suggest that I wouldn't do it. In other words, I don't take corporate PAC money. And I think that's important, because you can say all the right things on these forums and such, but ultimately how you run as a candidate and what your track record is will definitely have an influence on how you will show up in Congress. And for folks who are worried about their next congressperson being the next Fetterman, that's one of the ways we can make sure that doesn't happen, is look at folks' track record, look at where they get their money, and also look at the evolution of how they've talked since the beginning of this campaign to now.
I have to ask you, you think you're talking about the next Fetterman?
One
Did
of the
he take
things,
corporate PAC money?
well, the point is he ran one way and he's governed another.
Okay.
And it's real sexy now to run as a progressive, but he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And it's one of the questions I get so much for people who don't know me, who see my progressive platform, and they're like, how do I know you're not going to be the next Fetterman? And I say, I got receipts. And I think that's important.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, Senator Street, your turn.
Thank you. I absolutely support universal access to healthcare. I think we should there are 24 million Americans that are still don't have access to healthcare, and I think we should make sure every last one of them has access to Medicaid. More than that, public payer systems currently don't pay enough. But hospitals like Temple and Einstein that are upwards to 85-90% Medicare and Medicaid are they're only getting 62 cents on the dollar, which is why the quality of healthcare in those communities is substandard. I have worked consistently to make sure that there are reimbursements for high Medicaid utilization hospitals at the state level. Temple and Einstein, at one point when I first got to the legislature, were literally going to close if they didn't get more money. I refused. I said I would hold up the entire Health and Human Services budget unless we got more money, and we got additional allocations that came through the Department of Commerce and Economic Development to make sure that they got that additional money. We talk about expanding access to healthcare. I sponsored the legislation that created the Pennsylvania Healthcare Exchange, as I've already talked about. And not only that, the workers who work at hospitals need to get paid. I have stood with the men and women of PASNAP, not once, not twice, but 3 times in their contract negotiations to make sure that we don't just send money to those healthcare systems, but that they actually get fair contracts. That's why PASNAP was the first union to endorse me, and they continue to work with me. I will tell you, it is important that everyone have access to healthcare. It's important that the workers who work in that system also can afford the healthcare in the places they work. It is important that those people be treated right. When we do that, you have better staff. You reduce staffing ratios, and people get better access to healthcare. And finally, I also want to echo the sentiments and I've co-sponsored legislation to stop private equity from buying up Hahnemann that bought up Crozier Chester and it stripped it down. And I would support legislation offered by Representative Elizabeth Warren that gets them out of not only our healthcare system, but gets them out of residential housing as well, because that's part of why they're driving up not only healthcare costs, but housing costs as well.
Thank you, Senator Street. Rep. Cephas.
I was the first to go.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. I'm so sorry. All right. So I believe it's Senator Street goes first this time. Okay. So if Democrats regain control of government, will you support and fight accountability?
I'll go first. I don't mind. I can go whatever order you want, but I do think in order it's supposed to be Rep. Rabb.
I don't know.
If you want me to go first, I will.
Can
But
you
I think
repeat the question.
Yes, I haven't. Yes. Okay, if Democrats regain control of government, will you support and fight for accountability for all members of government, from the president to cabinet members to Republicans in Congress, to every federal agent who has committed a crime, and bring them to justice for all their illegal actions and massive amounts of corruption? And how will you do this? How will you work to take back congressional power to curb the executive branch overreach? So yes, Rep. Rabb, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah.
So the answer to that is absolutely 100%, without a doubt. How we do that? One, we need to make sure we take back the House, and that we have the control and the power to impeach, and that we make sure that we hold everyone to account, and that we are clear about why these lawless folks in the Trump administration deserve this type of not just recrimination, but need to be held to account. I mean, we have a pedophile in the Oval Office. We cannot normalize that. We cannot justify anything other than boldness. We need to be a true opposition party, and we have to use the full resources of the U.S. House of Representatives to do it. But I also want to say something that's really relevant here, because this is the Democratic primary that we're running for in the bluest congressional district in the entire nation. We also have to hold our own to account. And that means all those folks who have normalized, who have soft pedaled, who've given excuses. When I hear Chuck Schumer say the problem with ICE is that they're not as well trained as police, and that's the gold standard. No wonder people don't want to come out and vote for Democrats. That's awful. So that also means that we have to hold our own leaders to account. And um, we need to make sure that the leaders who are representing us in Congress are the right ones for the right moment to do this work. And just getting to Congress and voting reflexively on whoever is already there in power is not appropriate, which is why you need to send the right type of Democrats to Congress to make sure that we have more public servants and fewer politicians.
Thank you, Rabb. All right, Senator Street.
Thank you. When I got elected in 2016, as we all did, on election night at my victory party, people were crying. I had promised my wife that I was going to just focus on being a good senator and representing people in the district. But she saw we'd lost Pennsylvania. Donald Trump was going to be president, and everyone was devastated. I began to travel around the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And then a little over a year into my term, both the chair and the vice chair of the Democratic Party, both positions were vacant. The vice chair lost a long battle with cancer, and the chair had to step aside. I ran for vice chair of the party and was later elected chair. At that time, when I got involved, we only had 16 out of 50 Democratic senators, and Republicans had more than 24 lead in the House, and Republicans controlled 13 out of 18 Democratic members of Congress. We only had 5 Democrats. We flipped the House while I was chair. We closed the gap to only 2. We're only 2 seats away from now flipping the state Senate, and we flipped a number of congressional districts. And I will tell you right now, in this moment, we have as many in our region. We have as many seats at stake that we could flip from red to blue as California has the flipped red blue after the constitutional amendment allowing reapportionment, whereas Texas is trying to flip from blue to red through their gerrymandering. I will go. I've held town halls in PA 1, PA 7, and PA 8. I've worked in PA 10, all of which can be flipped. And I've already begun talking to the leadership in Atlantic City and South Jersey about flipping that seat as well. I will help flip all 5 of those seats, which will give us a Democratic majority in Congress that will then be able to hold this president accountable, check executive power, and impeach him.
Thank you. Rep. Cephas, please.
Step number 1 that we absolutely have to do post the primary is crisscrossing the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to flip seats. I know that because I've been a member of the House of Representatives, again, that took back a chamber in the first 5 years since I was there. We did not have it for over the 10 to 15 years. And as a direct result of us flipping the chamber, I then became the majority chair of the Oversight Committee for the House of Representatives. So I know what it means to hold government accountable. And as your next Congresswoman, we already recognize that this guy is already an indicted criminal. And the Epstein files only expose even more that not only is he a pedophile, but he is hiding other pedophiles, both on the Democratic side and on the Republican side. We also are watching this authoritarian regime come into our communities and threaten our neighbors, our classmates, our business owners, not only with arresting and disappearing people, but also killing people in broad daylight. So we already know that all of the things that he has done we will find ourselves, when we take that majority, creating articles of impeachment. The one thing him and his speaker are getting it right is that if Democrats take back take back Congress in 2026, they will impeach Donald Trump and his entire administration. And again, when we do take back that chamber, we will be sure to do that. That will be our first line of things that we will do. But again, we will go after his entire administration and everybody that played a role in the monstrosities that he is imploring on our communities every single day. We also got to hold him accountable for the $137 billion that he is costing our economy here with his tariffs that for some reason the Supreme Court just woke up and decided that were illegal and that he was circumventing, the rights of that Congress has. But additionally, what he was doing in other countries and accepting financial gifts. So there is already a laundry list of things that are impeachable offenses. It has to be the thing that we do on day one. And until we get that majority, we need our oversight committee members playing an active role on exposing every single aspect. So by the time we get to the majority, everything is already laid out, and we have what we need to pull up those articles of impeachment for his entire administration so we can get back to doing the work of the working families and the American people here in our country.
Thank you very much. The next question is, what's your stance on American funding for Israeli defense? Do you believe in a two-state solution? And would you support an arms embargo on Israel and withdrawal of U.S. financial support for the state unless they agree to Palestinians having full civil and human rights? So, Senator Street, it's your turn.
Thank you. I believe in a two-state solution. I believe in peace. I believe there's no peace and prosperity for Palestinians without peace and prosperity for Israelis, and there is no peace and prosperity for Israelis without peace and prosperity for Palestinians. I believe that Gaza must be rebuilt for the Palestinian people. I believe that we have to have a multinational group that will work together to make sure that we can bring real peace to that region. I think we've looked at, when you look at the level of devastation that has taken place, you have to make real investments. Jesse Jackson talked about the fact that without peace, keep hope alive. When I was young, I used to think that I didn't really understand it, but now I understand, having watched that poverty is more highly correlated with gun violence than anything else. And the reality is that if people don't see a way out, there will be more violence. You can't. There must not only be there must be a real plan to allow there to be a Palestinian state, and there must be multinational cooperation in the development of that state. There must be the Arab states must have to participate as well. So it can't be an Israeli American led agenda solely. We need to be looking at. We need to make sure we're diplomatically engaged and involved in the process as well, and we need to make sure that there are protections for both Israelis and Palestinians. Look, I'm running out of time. I will say this: we're not going to solve all of these problems in 2 minutes. But I will say this: I do believe that there were war crimes committed in the way that war was prosecuted, and that the folks responsible should be held accountable for those war crimes. That being said, I'm out of time, but I support a two-state solution, and I support the right of Palestinians and Israelis to both exist.
Thank you. Rep. Cephas, your turn.
In this moment that we absolutely need new leadership in Israel. Right now, Netanyahu is our version of Donald Trump, where there is a majority of Americans that do not agree with him. They do not agree with his policies. They do not agree with, starting endless wars. I come from a generation where I was in 12th grade in English class when 9/11 happened. And we are a generation that have continued to see endless wars put on, by our country that not only impacts, our economy and our soldiers, but continues to impact families across decades. So we absolutely need to see new leadership in Israel so we can get back to a point where we could be diplomatic about the region. The main goal for our country should be to help stabilize that region. And I do believe in a two-state solution. I believe Israel has the right to exist, but I also believe Palestinians should have the right to exist without having the threat of hunger or without having the threat of being terrorized by Hamas or being, targeted by any weapons of mass destruction. So I believe that, again, there needs to be a two-state solution, and our country needs to be a part of that in creating a regional dialogue to ensure that every community is able to thrive, particularly in this moment. Additionally, I believe that, again, we have to stabilize the region, and the way that we do that is being a leader in this conversation. And I think, as your next congresswoman, I will be, laser focused on ensuring from a foreign policy perspective that that is a top priority for ours. So again, that we can have communities in the region that are able to thrive. I currently represent a Orthodox community, and I've witnessed during October 7th and the numerous incidents of the terror that has happened with the community, and I've watched it being devastated, and ensuring that they are protected here at home, but also in their home nation is going to be critical, particularly for the next Congress. And I additionally, as we hold Donald Trump accountable for all of his crimes, we also have to ensure that we are holding the people over in that region, them accountable for their war crimes as well.
Thank you very much. So the next question is,
I'd love to answer this one as
oh
well.
my God, I did it to you again.
That's all right.
I'm so sorry. Yes, I see that it's your.
That's all right. That's all right. Thank you for the opportunity to address this issue. There is an active genocide going on in Gaza. Let me repeat that. There's an active genocide going on in Gaza, and we all are complicit with our taxpayer dollars. People are asking me on the campaign trail. People have not heard about me. They want to know, first thing, where are you on Gaza? And if I don't acknowledge this ongoing systemic atrocity, they walk away. But I do, because we can all see it. It is more than just war crimes. And it is our complicity as a nation in it, bipartisan complicity. The DNC did not want to release a report, its debrief on the 2024 election, because it acknowledged that Democrats took the wrong approach in addressing an issue that alienated many folks who had no intention of voting for Donald Trump, who stayed at home. Now, we can judge those folks all we want, but now history will judge us. And as far as a two-state solution, that requires two willing partners. Netanyahu ain't one of them. There are hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets trying to get rid of this guy. People who understand what justice is, people who don't believe in an apartheid state, wanting an Israel that respects the rights of everyone, irrespective of their faith or ethnicity or origins. Those are the folks we need to listen to there, and listen to the Palestinians and get off their neck as the American government. We need to remove our boot off their neck and bring them to the table in multilateral discussions, but we should not be leading on this issue. They should. They are the appropriate stakeholders, and we should allow the space so that that can happen in good faith. Is it hard? Yes, but it's the only way forward. So we have to recognize the genocide in Palestine, but we also have to acknowledge the right to self-determination. And we cannot fund arms for human rights violations. And that's what we continue to do, and we must stop that. So the last thing I want to say is, we also have to make sure that all people held without due process in the region are immediately released with permanent, lasting ceasefire. That's important too. Before we talk about all this other things, we have to talk about the baseline. And that's the baseline. And I understand that these are difficult truths. I also understand that the right-wing extremists are using this uprise in anti-Semitism to quiet dissent, even among Jewish folks who believe that there is a genocide, believe that we must do things differently than what has been happening now. And I believe that if we operate in good faith and bring these stakeholders together and make sure the US is no longer complicit in the militarism and imperialism in this area, that we can have a lasting peace, because no one is free, whether it's Israeli Jews or Palestinian Muslims or Arab Christians or anyone else in the region, unless everyone feels protected and has self-determination, and there's no hierarchy of human rights.
Thank you, Rabb. So I have a quick question, and this will be the last one. What do you think of expanding the Supreme Court? So, Rep. Cephas, I believe you're next.
I believe that we have to do multiple things with our Supreme Court. Yes, expanding is number one, but we have to start by holding them accountable for all of their ethics violations. There's no way that Clarence Thomas can be on a yacht trip with the same person that's going to appear before his court in the following week for him to make a decision. He is already absolutely compromised at this point. So we have to increase ethics and oversight over our Supreme Court so they are not taking advantage of their lifetime positions on that court. Because again, they make decisions that transform our lives completely. I mean, they've, given all power to, this king and this authoritarian government. They have stripped us of our rights when it comes to Roe v. Wade that we here in Pennsylvania actually had to, fight back to ensure that we were protecting reproductive, health care in our state, so much so that we saw a 300% increase coming from Ohio and West Virginia just to access services. And that's a direct result of an unelected, unaccountable Supreme Court that is absolutely rogue. So we have to ensure that we increase ethics and oversight and hold them accountable. The next thing is that we cannot do lifetime appointments. There has to be not only an age cap, but there also has to be term limits when it comes to our Supreme Court justices. I mean, there should not be any reason, again, that Clarence Thomas is making decisions for the reproductive future of my 5-year-old niece, or making the decisions when it comes to her having to practice, not only fire drills, but active shooter drills, because for some reason we can't get gun control right in our country. So yes, we need to expand the court. I will be, one of the first as your next Congresswoman to sign on to legislation for that. But we also have to expand, how we transform and how we transform that body to ensure that they are a reflection of the American people and the perspective and the decisions of the American people over, courses of time.
Thank you, Rep. Cephas. All right, Rep. Rabb, your turn.
Thank you. We absolutely need to pack the courts, and we need to add term limits. Absolutely. We need to depoliticize how Supreme Court justices are appointed. That's also very important. So yes, we can do all of those things, ideally, when we're in the majority with the right person in the White House too. That would be great. We have to act boldly. We cannot normalize this. I've said it before. But I have to say, folks, it's 7:00 and I have another event. Are we allowed to get into our closing remarks? Because I can't.
Under the circumstances, yes, we started late, and go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. MAGA-fueled racism of all kinds and hatred is on the rise. We all feel it. We all feel the need to fight back. This is a unique moment in Philly history. This is what Indivisible was made for. We have a chance to reset, to aim for a better future, and demand more from our politics. I'm here because I know the system is killing us, and it must be stopped. The best way to tell what a leader will do in the future is to look at what they've done in the past. From fighting for a living wage to fighting to get rid of ICE, I have been on the front lines from the beginning. Who do you trust in this moment? So, listen, I've heard other folks talk about opposing private equity, but if they're taking money from private equity, AIPAC-supported billionaires, what does that tell you? I don't understand how we're in the bluest congressional district in the entire country, but we have a really important choice. It can't be any Democrat we send there. So I want to make sure that you send a true progressive fighter with a 10-year track record of proven leadership, one you can trust, and one who's never taken corporate PAC money. And I'm the only one in this race who will listen to the constituents without fear of moneyed interests, because I'm doing this for the many, not the moneyed. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, back to the question. Senator Street.
So, listen, I respect the fact that I also have another event. So I
Okay.
want to say this. One, we have to stand up against Donald Trump, and yes, we need to change the composition of the court, and we need to make sure that the rules around the emoluments clause and them taking bribes are stopped. We need to make sure we can get a court that is responsive, and I am for the proposed changes to the court. But I will say in a broader sense, look, I live in the hood. I live in North Philadelphia, and the people in my community can't just accept theoretical changes. They need us to change things right away. Um, while lots of folks talk about all the changes we need to see around gun violence, when you live in a place where people are getting shot and you look the mothers in the eyes who've lost children, and when they're your family members, you know we need to do something now. When there are lots of people that talk about purist ideas around healthcare, but when you have people who literally can't see a doctor right now in their neighborhood and they live on your block, you got to do something, and that's why we created the Pennsylvania Healthcare Exchange. When you look at people who can't afford their own neighborhood, and that's why I was a co and they wonder, well, what are you doing right now? That's why I was a co-sponsor of the whole home repair bill to make sure that those people can get their heat fixed. When you look at the problems that are affecting people right now, Barack Obama talked about it, the fierce urgency of now. He talked about the fact that we have people who have problems right now. And Howard Dean called it not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. I want the perfection that we all seek as well, but I understand because I live in the communities where people are desperate to get it and they don't have the privilege of having a lot of money. They don't have the privilege of being able to go back to a safe neighborhood. They don't have the privilege of not having these problems impact them today. And so I am for, and that is why I've worked and delivered solutions on real progressive things. And we have a lot of candidates in this race that care about progressive values. But I am one who has delivered on housing. I've delivered on gun violence money. I've delivered on health care. I've delivered on the police reform bill. I've delivered on the issues that affect my neighbors because I have to look them every day when I go home back to 16th and Lehigh, where I have lived in the neighborhood I've lived my entire life, and let them know that we're going to do something for them. And as a congressman, I will be just as committed. And I will tell you, I was the first Black person. I was the first Muslim to serve in the leadership of the statewide party, the first one to be chair. It's because I can understand that the issues that affect my community affect everyone else. And when you fight for the people at the bottom who have nothing, you lift everyone. And that is what I've done as a member of the state Senate. And that is what I will do as a member of Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Street. Rep. Cephas, it's up to you for your closing statement.
Thank you so much. And I do want to offer my apologies for forcing the program to run a little late. You think I would get technology, given how much we've used it over the past couple of years. But again, I just want to thank you all for being a part of today's conversation. Particularly, I want to thank Indivisible, because you know in this moment that, yes, we have multiple Democrats running in this race, and we are the most Democratic seat in the entire country, more Democratic than they are in California. But it is about who we are sending to Congress that is going to represent this district. And in this moment, the next congressperson has to do multiple things at the same time. One, we have to stand up and beat back the Republican Party, particularly those that enable Donald Trump to do what he is doing. And I have done that as a member of the House of Representatives, working alongside organizations like you all to take back a majority in the House of Representatives. And we did not have that chamber for close to 10 to 15 years, and we took it back in 5. The 3 of us were all elected in 2016. And what I can fundamentally say is that I am in the majority in my chamber, and I've worked hard with organizations like yours to actually get there. Because it's important. When you're coming from the city of Philadelphia with the multitude of challenges that we have, we are the second poorest, biggest city in the entire country. So I first ran for office in 2016 because in order to have Harrisburg meet the needs of our challenges. We had to take back that majority. And as a direct result, we've done that and given Joanna McClinton the gavel and to be our first Black female speaker in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I had the distinct pleasure of nominating her this time around. And as a direct result, we've been able to collectively deliver big and put the priorities of Philadelphia at the table, on the agenda, and on the menu. And that is addressing our public safety issues, addressing education, protecting our reproductive rights, which was critical, particularly when Roe v. Wade fell. Additionally, we've been able to expand the conversation to address maternal mortality, where we're actually seeing the decline here in the city of Philadelphia. So it's not just about fighting Republicans, it's about beating them. And I've been a part of a body and a part of a Democratic Party that is able to defeat Republicans. And that's what we have to do in 2026. But also, I go back to my first election in 2016, where I actually had to take on the Democratic Party here in the city of Philadelphia in order to get my seat at the table. But it's mainly because I come from a working class family. My mother stood on that infamous 1986 picket line, and she was protesting and fighting for the same things that we're fighting for today: economic opportunity, better wages, better benefits, a retirement plan where she does not have to go back to work. And I was 2 years old in a stroller, where I wasn't there for an extra set of hands. I was there because she couldn't afford childcare. And right now, I have to watch her every morning at 10 a.m. to go back to work to be able to afford her mortgage, her health care, and her heat. And right now, our country is going in the wrong direction, not just because of bad policies from Republicans, but from do-nothing Democrats that were okay with the status quo. And Democrats, particularly here in Pennsylvania, lost and let this country down in 2024. But the only thing that was able to survive was the House of Representatives. And it is because of that experience over the last 10 years that we have to be transformational in this moment. And we have to send Democrats that have the experience in being transformational, particularly here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, if we are going to move this country in the right direction and get back to focusing on the working families here in the city of Philadelphia. And I'll close on this. Right now, we are fighting another fight. We are fighting whether or not we close 20 school buildings so we can afford to expand affordable housing across this city. That is the wrong fight that we are having. But we are having that fight because of the dysfunction of Washington, D.C., and we're not focusing on the challenges here in the city of Philadelphia. So I ask to, again, be your next Congresswoman for the 3rd Congressional District. So, again, we can send a proven fighter down to Washington, D.C. that's going to refocus this country on what matters to our daily lives and our day to day. So I apologize for not getting the link correct, but thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before your organization. And, I absolutely look forward to the next several months as we transform the city of Philadelphia together through the 3rd Congressional District.
Thank you very much, Rep. Cephas.
Absolutely.
Over to you, Vicki.
All right, great. Well, we thank all the candidates for being here, and we thank you all for being here. We're sorry we ran a little late, but I think it was a very informative meeting, and we thank you all. One reminder, No Kings is March 28th, so please remember to sign up. And soon we will have a volunteer form out, and you can sign up to volunteer if you want. We'll always need a bunch of volunteers, so that'll be very helpful for us, and we'll have more information as we go along. So thank you so much, and we will see you soon. We'll see you at No Kings.